Today is February 7th, 2019. My name is Steve Matthews, and otherwise known as Teeth of the Lamb, all one word. I can be found on YouTube under the name Teeth of the Lamb. In one of my recent videos, Sun and Moon phase angles don't work out, flat Earth, I discussed the angle of the shadow in relationship to the Sun and how they don't line up most of the time. Notice the hot spot in the left photograph, that it's right down near the bottom, and notice the angle. That hot spot isn't causing that shadow. 6 hours later on the right photo, you can see that the hot spot has moved up, but it's still not quite centered where it should be to cast that shadow. Over quite a number of years, I've developed a pretty good eye for light and shadow and perspective based on my artistic background as an oil painter and an acrylic painter. When the moon's in its phases, you can clearly see when you take photographs spaced apart by several hours that the moon makes a clockwise rotation. Now, to expand on the thought of the moon rotating, another observation is that during the last lunar eclipse, there was no rotation. You can see the Sea of Crises on the right at about the 3 o'clock position here, and throughout the duration of the eclipse, it stayed put in one place, which it had done all day long, and exhibited no rotation whatsoever. And then as the end of the eclipse, you can see it's still in the same location. Then it made a drastic jump just as it entered the phase, its first phase, after the full moon. And it moved about 30-40 degrees in less than an hour, which is surprising. Now, we have reason to believe, it's not yet substantiated, that all full moons are fixed and don't move. But when they're in the phases, the moon does rotate. Now, under fair use for critique and discussion, I want to show you a little animation that was put out by Time and Date. And surprisingly, they have the moon fixed and then making that large jump. I'm surprised that they actually showed it accurately. And take a look here. Pay close attention to the round Sea of Crises at the top, about the 12 o'clock position, that it stays fixed right up until the end of the eclipse. Another thing I'd like to point out while we're on this, that they rely on the fact that the average Joe isn't going to back check the path of that shadow going across the moon. That would require a pole-to-pole equatorial shift of the Earth that would change all the seasons in a matter of hours. And we should also mention that the Earth would have to jump backwards and then move forward again in order to cause this shadow with a fixed and stationary sun. As of yet, it's still unclear whether or not this fixed and stationary moon is isolated to the eclipse, or if all full moons are fixed in one position and lack rotation. At this point in time, I've put a shout out to the community to get some photographic evidence of the upcoming full moon so we can verify one way or the other. Recently, Rich at Mr. Thrive and Survive and Bob at Globebusters, we've corresponded briefly with email about this topic, and we're all eager to see what the outcome is of the next full moon to see if it rotates or not. So stay tuned to all of our channels, because I'm sure that one or all of us will be making commentary on this topic here. The fact that the moon exhibits a clockwise rotation during its phases is substantiated. I've personally taken time to photograph it 5 different times. You can see once here in December, and then here again in January. I've done this on 3 other occasions also. I want to make a little comment about refraction, perspective, field rotation, and the hotspot, and how impossible that is if you have a stationary moon and it's not rotating. In all of these scenarios, rotation has to exist first. None of them can create the illusion of rotation. And what I'm referring to here is that we know that the moon does traverse the sky, but you can't have a clockwise rotation from refraction or perspective, not unless that rotation is already pre-existing. As you can see in the diagram above, refraction can displace the apparent position of an object, but it can't cause it to rotate. Here's some more examples of that. Light enters in and it bends. So it doesn't cause a rotation at all, just displacement. Then what about perspective? We all know how that works. It goes to the horizon, line of sight, and everything angles to that point. It doesn't do this. I've never seen perspective cause an effect like that, or like this. Learned about perspective looks like this. It all goes to line of sight, and that's it. I think it's a mistake to redefine what perspective actually is. And at this point in time, I can conclusively say that the moon definitely has an apparent clockwise rotation, and that during the eclipse it was stationary right up until the point of entering into the phases. So in my humble opinion, the only thing that the Globers have on the table is field rotation, and it could likely cause the effect of a rotation, but that's still undetermined. If we have a stationary full moon all of the time, that card's going to be off the table completely. So stay tuned, because we're going to have the answer to this question once and for all here shortly, the next full moon. And I would encourage anybody that is able with the proper equipment to take photographs every hour or so of the moon, to do so, and submit them to teethofthelamb@hotmail.com. I do know that Rich, Mr. Thrive and Survive, has actively been pursuing this, and he's planned some observations of his own, as will I. And Bob at Globebusters has said that he's going to keep an eye on it, so we'll be updating you. At this point, I'd like to talk just a little bit about myself, something I don't necessarily cherish to do, but I think it's pertinent and relevant to have a little bit of a background on the person that's saying these things. Around 1985, my wife and we started a computer retail and service center, and we had that for like 15 years, and we did business with just about every municipality in our local area, and we did a lot of networking and just computer sales, you know. I'm pretty much a self-taught welder and handyman, do carpentry and all that stuff. I took an old propane tank that I was going to make into a forge, and one year I decided to weld that up into a stove for my sister and give it to her for Christmas, and I did that. May not be a great job, but it worked. Got to look in here. Definitely going to get hot. Okay, we got the coffee perking. You can see her going there. Yeah, on the old propane tank. And it smells good too. I'm all tooled up. I have most of the tools to do any job I need to do. I'm done a little bit of machining and built this picket twister 1 year and a scroll bender out of hydraulics, and I scrounged all the parts from the junkyard, and we have a lot of fish plants and stuff around here, and when they call out the boats and the fish plants, they remodel them. I took some of their parts and put all this together, and I like to refurbish things. This old air compressor, I took that and reworked it, rewired it and everything, and made it into this, and I still use that today. It's real handy. I've also taken and built a few gates. This is a 17-foot gate for my brother-in-law, and then I built some railings and stuff for people, but nothing professionally, just for fun. Then I'm into art. This I drew in high school, and that's Mark Twain, by the way. And then I've made paintings. This is in acrylics, and it's a large painting. Gave that to my sister-in-law, and I made this up out of my head. Didn't have anything to look at. This was just an experiment. Again, this is a oil painting that I made up in my head. Didn't have anything to look at to do this. So you have to have a little bit of a grasp on perspective and light and shadow. This is acrylics. Another oil painting I did. These are hobbies of mine. I'm also a nationally certified RV technician, and had my license for a long time, and I gave that up for doing nothing. And I made this of my brother-in-law's. Got a house on the coast, and so I made that sky up for him and used his tree line. This is another rendition of it in oil, and that's me. I made that one. It's a 2-foot by 3-foot dragon. Thought I'd try something different. Gave that to my son because he is into gaming, and so I thought he'd like it. This is for another son of mine that he has a t-shirt business, so Genius Apparel, so I made that up. It's his logo from his business card. And here's another oil painting. These two here, I saw them on the internet and I liked them, so I just reproduced them in my own style. But, you know, it shows an aptitude to think and understand perspective and light, and that's all I'm trying to get a point across about. And I'd like to be the first one to say that none of these things that I've done in my life make me write about anything, but they do show an aptitude. I'd like to also add that, like so many kind commenters on some of the videos have accused me of sitting around smoking pot all day and drinking. I don't drink, and I've never smoked pot. So there you have it. And had I done that, I probably wouldn't be very ambitious. And on that note, I think it's time to say thank you for watching, and stay tuned if you want to follow the upcoming observations. Like and subscribe, and till next time, bye.